Hi everyone, welcome to our live stream and thank you for tuning in. My name is Joey and I'm part of the community team at LottieFiles. As we have folks joining from across the globe today, do give yourself a shout out on the live chat or drop a comment to say hi and tell us where you're from. For those tuning in for the first time, let me start by giving you a quick intro to who we are and what we do. LottieFiles is a platform for testing, collaborating, and discovering animation for a community of designers and developers. The platform offers a range of tools and features that aim to make the discovery, creation, and implementation of Lottie animations easier and more efficient. To give you an even better idea, here's an intro video to what LottieFiles is all about.
I've got a big fat drum, big fat drum. I've got a big fat drum, pounding so bad. I've got a big fat drum, big fat drum. I've got a big fat, big.
Listen. Yeah. Clap. You ready? Let's go.
We hope you enjoyed that intro. So for today's session, we have Sam, our senior full-stack developer, and Alex, our open source team lead. They'll be sharing about the new features on Lottie-interactivity, new ways to interact with your Lotties, and what the open source team at LottieFiles is all about. So without further ado, let us welcome our speaker today, Sam and Alex.
Hi, Judy.
Hello.
Hi. So before we begin, maybe Alex and Sam, you can take turn, introducing yourself a little to our audience today.
Sure thing. Hi, everyone. I'm Alex Harper. I'm from the UK, and I'm an engineer on the open source team at LottieFiles.
Hey, everyone. I am Sam Osborne. I am also from the UK, but I live in France, and I'm on the open source team at LottieFiles, mostly working on Lottie-interactivity, the player wrappers, and creating YouTube content.
Right. Thanks so much. All right, so let's not put our audience in any more suspense and begin our first session with Alex. So folks, feel free to drop your question for Sam and Alex on the live chat and they will get to them at the end of the session. So Alex, the stage is yours. Sam and I will rejoin you later.
Okay, great. Thanks, Judy. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. So today I'm going to be talking a bit about open source software and why LottieFiles is heavily invested in creating an open source ecosystem around Lottie. When someone writes software, the end product is usually something that's user-friendly. For instance, visiting a website, using Microsoft Word, or playing an Xbox game are all very easy and don't require any knowledge of software programming. This is really convenient for the end user if they only want to use the software. However, if there's a bug or maybe they have an idea for a new feature they would like to add, then they would need access to the source code. So open source software means that the system has its source code shared, and it's typically available for users to modify for their own use. Having source code available means that users are able to fix bugs, change the way a program works to adapt it to their own needs, or take it in a completely different direction if they want to. One of the most famous open source projects of all time is Linux. Linux started off as an operating system for computers, but it's now 30 years old and it's used in everything from household appliances to set-top boxes, Android phones to car entertainment systems, computers, and even web servers. There's a huge number of open source projects available on a website called GitHub, and LottieFiles have created some popular and useful open source projects which are hosted there. So what is open source? Open source projects have had an incredible impact on the technological landscape, and I'm pretty certain that a computer, tablet, or phone that you use day to day has some significant open source software running on it. That's true for Windows, Linux, Mac, and Android. Even the internet is built on a huge number of open source technologies and open standards. It would be great to know if any of you are involved in open source, or if you've ever contributed to a project, then drop us a message in the chat and let us know. So this is all great, but why is LottieFiles doing this? Here at LottieFiles, we contribute to open source projects because it's a great way to help build lasting value and a community. By having open libraries for working with Lottie animations, we enable our users to come up with new and interesting features, reuse the code in their own applications, and spread the use of Lottie in ways which we had never thought of by ourselves. Basically, the more people and companies that use Lottie technology, the stronger and more exciting the ecosystem becomes. So if you're interested in getting our project and running them locally, you need editors such as VS Code as well as a Git client. VS Code is another super popular open source project for programming with, and it's got a huge number of third-party extensions that enable you to work with all kinds of code bases in many different languages. Most of our team here at LottieFiles use VS Code, but there's plenty of alternatives as well. If you need an editor, it's a great place to start. I won't cover up setting up VS Code now, as there's already a ton of high-quality tutorials available online, and each project may have some specific requirements. Have a look on YouTube before you'll find what you need. So, GitHub. LottieFiles has a public page available at github.com/LottieFiles, and all of our open source projects are listed there. At present, we've got 28 projects that are open, but we're always releasing new things that we think will be useful for the community. Our projects typically relate to helping the Lottie ecosystem, and this includes things like documentation, helpers for interacting with Lottie JSON files, various players and plugins for different front-end frameworks, and extensions to allow adding interactivity and themes to your Lottie animations. So now I'm going to take you through a few of the open source projects that the LottieFiles team are currently working on. First up is JLottie. JLottie is a Lottie animation player which targets a popular subset of the available Lottie features. The JLottie player was actually started as an experimental player. It was made to see if it was possible to create a JavaScript-based player with a tiny code base while retaining as many of the essential playback features as possible. This means it's a really compact project with a deployed size of only around 11 KB, while still supporting about 80% of the current Lottie spec. The primary use case for JLottie is enabling web apps to have animated UI components, such as reactions, and it can enable a large number of concurrent animations on a web page without significantly affecting playback speed, which is great for user experience and for SEO. JLottie has already had some great community interest and contributions. Next up is LottiePlayer. LottiePlayer is the Lottie web player, but as an easy-to-use web component. It's built on top of the open source Lottie web to give more power to the design and animation community. It's one of our most popular open source projects. It's used in over 500 other projects, has been started over 700 times in GitHub, and has an incredible 20,000 downloads per week of the node package. The code is available at github.com/LottieFiles/Lottie-player. If you'd like to just embed an animation into your web app, though, you can visit LottieFiles.com/web-player, and you can use the dialog there to really easily and quickly create an embed snippet. So, Lottie theming. Lottie theming is a library that allows you to create and apply theme files to Lotties. The theme file is a property collection and map, which enables you to change the properties of a Lottie animation dynamically. It's available at github.com/LottieFiles/Lottie-theming. There's a ton of great use cases for theming, such as applying different color themes to work with light and dark mode, changing text or images for a specific language or culture, or anything else you can think of. Maybe having a special theme for significant events such as Christmas or the New Year. Theming is currently only available for web players, but we're actively working on enabling it for desktop and mobile as well in the very near future. We think that having theming and interactivity with Lotties will enable some amazing creativity, and we can't wait to see what designers and developers can come up with. So that's all from me today. Thanks for listening, and I hope you've enjoyed the quick tour of LottieFiles' open source ecosystem. Open source is all about community and making what's useful for everyone, not just beneficial to one company. New people are always welcome, and we're adding tasks on GitHub, which can be suitable for first-time contributors. So why not pop over to our Discord server and say hi if you haven't already. We're growing the open source team, and would love to hear from users that have any ideas for what we should build next. Now I'm going to hand you over to Sam, who's the lead developer on Lottie-interactivity, and he's going to give us a deep dive on all the cool ways it can enhance your projects. Thanks again, everyone. Over to you, Sam.
Cheers, Alex. So, hello, everyone. I'm really excited today to share with you the new features we've been working on with the Lottie-interactivity library, which we're calling interaction chaining. And interaction chaining is a way to create interactive scenarios, which will allow you to sequence Lottie animations one after the other and go between these Lottie animations depending on a bunch of different interactions that can happen. You can either play a full animation, you can play part of it, or you can also dynamically load up Lottie animations from a URL, one after the other. So what does that look like in production? Well, here we've got a little pigeon running. And if I click on our little pigeon, unfortunately, it blows up, but don't worry, it's going to be all right, and it's back with us. So our pigeon animation here is split into 3 different parts: the bird running, the explosion, and the feathers falling. And we've split this animation up using named markers. And we've actually recently released a video on how to set that up on the LottieFiles YouTube channel. So you can check that out after the live stream. But we're going from the pigeon running to the explosion via the click transition, and the explosion and feathers are playing one after the other after the segment has finished playing. And Lottie-interactivity makes it really simple to set up, whereas if you were just using pure JavaScript and doing this by yourself, it would take a lot of code. But as you can see here, we simply define 3 different actions, and we can create these really interesting interactive scenarios. So if you have used Lottie-interactivity before and are familiar with it, we set it up the same way as before. We define a mode, and here we're defining the chain mode. And then we define our actions. And with Lottie-interactivity, the main and important parts in the actions are the state and transition. So the state defines how your Lottie animation will play whilst you're waiting for an interaction. So here for the bird segment, I've defined it as loop. So the bird is just going to keep on running forever. And the transition is then defined as click. So when click happens, we go to the next action. And we've got a bunch of different transitions available, which I'm going to go through over the course of this demo. But one interesting thing we can use as well are the actual events from the Lottie animations. So here we've got on complete. So that means when the explosion segment has finished playing, it will then go to the feathers. And as you can see here for the frames, we've defined it as strings rather than numbers because we're using named markers. And this makes it really easy to read and understand what exactly our interactions are going to look like, and really helps with readability. But you can also define frames, which I will show later on. So there you have it. With 3 simple actions, we can create really interesting and fun interactive scenarios. So I talked about the different transitions and new interactions. So let me just show you those now. So here with the click transition, you can also define a count property. And this means you have to click 5 times before going to the next action in your interactive scenario. So if we click 5 times on the star, we then get the confetti. And I've also defined here a false flag property. And this means as soon as you click, the animation will play from the start rather than waiting for the segment to finish playing. And you may have noticed here, I've defined the path property. And this is how you load up dynamically the animations. So here we've got the confetti, which is loaded up dynamically. And this is really powerful because it means that any public-facing Lottie animation, which returns a valid Lottie JSON, can be really quickly implemented into your interactive scenarios. So that means you have access to all the assets on LottieFiles.com really quickly and can integrate them into your interactions really quickly and easily, rather than having to go into After Effects, import them, stitch them together, and then re-export as a brand new Lottie. All you have to do here is just define a path, and you have it available to you. So that's a really cool feature of Lottie interactivity and the interaction chaining, which is now available. And then we have defined a non-complete transition and reset the reset property. So this means that animation will just reset when it's finished playing. Next, we have hover, pretty basic Transition, the same as click really, but you just hover over the animation and it works with count as well. So if you hover over it 5 times, you then go to the next action, which will load up the confetti. And next up, we have the repeat transition. So here you can see the morphing shapes will have to play twice before going to the next action in our interactive scenario, sorry. And here we can define the transition as repeat, and then the repeat property is set to 2, so it's going to play twice, and then it will go to the twirling shapes. And in our second action, you can see here I've defined the frames as an array of numbers, so it's going to play from frame 0 to 110. When it's finished playing, it will then reset and play again. So that's repeat. Next up, we have hold. And hold is one of my favorite interactions, because if we hold on the Lottie animation, it will start playing. And if we remove the cursor, it will actually play backwards. But here, as you can see, I've defined frames 0 to 170. So this means that I have to hold on to the Lottie animation until we get to frame 170. It will then have a transition and play the next animation in our interactive scenario. So let me just hold on to that for you. And then we dynamically load up the checkmark animation. So that's for hold. Next up, we have pause hold, which is in the same vein, except that when we remove the cursor, it actually pauses the animation rather than playing backwards. But if you hold on long enough, the next animation will load up. So if you're familiar with Lottie interactivity, you may have already used the sync interaction, but with interaction chaining, we can actually sync the animation to the cursor movement and define an amount of frames we want to sync to. And when we move the cursor far enough and get to this defined frame, it will then cause a transition. So here in this animation, I've set it up so that the unlock button is to the left on frame 0. And then, as you can see here, frame 30, it will be all the way to the right. So this will give us the impression that we're unlocking the phone. Once that happens, it will then have a transition and then autoplay from frames 30 to 160. So let's see what that looks like. So here, if I just slide to unlock, and then the Lottie logo automatically plays. So that's syncing to the cursor. Here, I just wanted to touch on the fact that using the path property, we can load up Lotties from a URL. You can also use a local path. And you can also define how many actions you want. So if you wanted to play in a sequence 20 Lottie animations, one after the other, you can really easily do that by just defining an autoplay state, transitioning on complete, and defining the path. And it will just go through all of them one after the other. So last but not least, we have jump to, which is just a little property which allows you to jump between the different actions once the action is defined on has been completed. So at the end, we're going to jump to index 1, which is actually the triangle action. So this just means you can hop around the different actions if you want to. So here, if I play, we get the circle, we get the triangle, square, and the last character. And instead of going back to the circle, we get the triangle. We've also added a few other bonus sort of properties, like adding a delay and changing the speed of your action. And we've also added toggling to standalone interactions, playing on show. The pause and pause hold interactions are also available as standalone interactions. So if you do end up using interaction chaining on the web, be sure to show it with us on our LottieFiles social media account. We'd love to see them. But otherwise, thank you for listening. I hope you enjoy using Lottie interactivity, and we will now go over to the Q&A. Cheers.
Thanks, Alex. Thanks, Sam, for the session. I hope everyone learned more about our open source team and also about Lottie interactivity. While we wait for the questions to flow in, let's get to some that were submitted to us before the live stream first. All right, so the first one that we got was, what does a day in life look like in the open source team?
Okay, I can take this one if you want. So a typical day in the life of the open source team is we tend to have a team sync on a Monday and a Friday just to see, on a Monday, plan how things are going for the week, and then on a Friday, see how things have been and if there's anything blocking any of the projects. But apart from that, most of the team work on individual projects for the week, and it's a mixture of implementing new features, fixing any bugs that might crop up, and making sure that anything on any issues on GitHub that have been brought up are dealt with. That's pretty much it.
Thanks, Alex. Sam, would you like to add on anything?
Yeah, no, I mean, for me personally, like I usually use the afternoons to develop features on the new libraries, and yeah, in the mornings pick up the different issues.
I see. Great. So we have a very shy crowd today, so we're going to continue with the questions that we collected during registration. Does Lottie interactivity only work with the Lottie player?
So no, Lottie interactivity actually is player independent. So you can use any player you want as long as you pass it the Lottie animation data. It will then use that to power the interactions on it. So you don't have to stick to the Lottie player wrapper.
Okay. And as the next one, I guess it's a follow-up as well. Is there a limit to how many actions you can have?
Not really. You can, if I go up here, you can define a lot of actions. It's really just depending on how many you want to fit in. But as I said, the animations will be dynamically loaded if you use ones from URLs. So no, there's no really problem with size constraints. It will just go one after the other. And so yeah, if you want 20 plus animations to play one after the other, that's completely fine.
All right. So we have one more question. I guess Alex and Sam, feel free to pick it up as well. What technical skills are needed to be part of the open source team?
Alex, maybe if you want to go ahead with that one.
Yeah, I can start with that one. Yeah. It depends on the project you're working on. We have a large number of JavaScript and TypeScript projects on the open source team. Also a couple of C++ code bases as well. But yeah, primarily I'd say it's JavaScript, TypeScript, and some Canvas, mostly web tech.
See, thanks so much, Alex. So yes, definitely a very shy crowd today, but I'm sure the questions will come in probably when they rewatch. We do have one from Karam. He says that we need more puns and jokes during the presentation. Duly noted. Thank you for your feedback. But I guess that's that. Oh, there is one question. Let's see. Are there any other ways to make an animation besides AE?
Yes, so you can either use the SVG to Lottie converter on LottieFiles, but also if you check out lottifiles.com/integrations, you can find a bunch of different other software that support exporting to Lottie animations.
Alex, anything that you'd like to add?
No, that's pretty much covers it, to be honest.
All right. Thanks so much for the question. Yes, folks, we still have time if you have questions for Sam and Alex. Else we'll be getting more feedback on. Oh, sorry, Karam. So apparently the puns and jokes were for your hiring requirements. Yeah. Right. Oh, there is one more. Does Lottie players support .lottie?
So at the moment, the Lottie player does not support .LottieFiles. .Lottie has its own player. So yeah, it's for the moment it's two separate players for .LottieFiles.
All right.
That is something that we're looking at working on early in the next year, though. There's a lot more things going to be released around .Lottie in the near future. So, yeah.
All right, folks. Any other question before we wrap up for the day? We can give it a minute or more. Sam and Alex, would you like to share a little bit more about what the open source team has prepared for the community out there, and what they can find on GitHub?
Well, okay, there's another question. But for the new year, we're going to be hopefully working a lot more on .Lottie. And if there's any more, I personally love working on interactivity stuff. So if there's any sort of different interactions we haven't thought about, be sure to open up an issue on the GitHub page, and I'd love to be able to work on them and help anyone out who wants more interactions available.
There you go, folks. The doors are open, so shoot your question to Sam and submit your request, and he'll be there to pick it up. All right. Anything else that the folks can look forward to next year from the open source team? Apart from what Sam has shared previously. Anything to add on, Alex?
Yeah, we're planning on doing a lot more community engagement stuff. We've got a Discord server. I haven't got the link here handy, but we have got a Discord server where we're present all the time. So if there's any more questions that you come up with later on, feel free to jump on there and ask us, and one of the team can always get back to you at any point. Yeah, and Lottie theming should be available for desktop and mobile in the near future as well. So we're really excited about what that's going to unlock in terms of creativity.
All right. So thank you so much, folks, for all the questions. If you have more, feel free to drop it on the live chat or the comment section, and we'll be sure to get to them even after the live stream. And that's all the time that we have for today. Thank you so much once again, Sam and Alex, for all the insights. I'll be moving you backstage to wrap up the live stream for today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you once again, everyone, for tuning in. We hope you had a great time. And if you'd like to rewatch this session, you can find the recording on the LottieFiles social channels here. The team has a lot more live stream coming your way, so subscribe and follow us to stay updated. Lastly, we'd love to hear your feedback about this live stream. We'll also be selecting a few lucky winners from the submission to receive some cool LottieFiles swags. So don't forget to include your email address in the feedback form to stand a chance to win. And if you're interested to be part of our Lottie community's initiative to host awesome live streams such as today's, or even be a speaker at one, you can state your interest in the feedback form. With that said, thank you for tuning in, and we hope to see you again real soon. Bye, everyone.